Hey everyone, this is Katie from Moonflower Moments. Happy in bulk. This is my favorite of all of the holidays of the Wheel of the Year. This is the one that I go out of my way to celebrate, and I really just embrace full force. And so I think that today I'm going to do a bit of a January wrap up, but as well as mostly a February setting intention. So what in bulk means to me is essentially taking stock of the seeds that you have and deciding which ones you're going to plant for this year. And so there's so much intention setting at this point in preparation for the next year. And I think that that's exactly what I'm going to do this week. We're going to have some beautiful days of 70-degree weather, so I'm definitely going to be taking stock of my seeds. I always start my moonflower garden on February 1st, and then I keep the seeds inside in my tarot space just to make it a little bit extra magical and to make sure that they get the nurturing that they deserve so that they can be really beautiful. So that being said, I think thematically I have a lot of seed starting going on, and so my tarot practice is definitely going to reflect that. So this will be mostly intentions for the future, but before I jump right in, I do want to kind of look at the seeds that I sowed last month and kind of discuss with you what practices I engaged in January and if I want those seeds to continue, or if I would like to stop them and resume it at a later date. So that being said, my favorite practice that I engaged in January, which no doubt about it, I am going to continue, was my envelope reading. So at the end of December, I pulled all of my daily cards for every single day of January and I stuffed them in these envelopes. They're not very aesthetic. Look, I even have it crossed out, but the cat knocked them all over to the floor, so they're every which way. But I am going to keep using these envelopes, and I definitely love that practice because I just look forward to waking up every single day and opening up an envelope. My brain, I'm a Taurus moon, I am wired for a little treat. That is what motivates me. And so I think the whole envelope practice really works for me in the concept of I look forward to doing it every single morning. Mornings are the time when I have the least amount of spoons, so I try to conserve my energy as much as possible. So having all of my cards spread out for the entire month ahead of time really helps me to conserve that mental energy. But I've been really impressed with just how spot on things are. So I'm pretty sure that I will be making a Decks That Made Me Believe, it's really Decks and Experiences That Made Me Believe video pretty soon, and I will talk more about my envelope practice and how that's just been reaffirming my belief in tarot then. So in January, these are the decks that I used for that practice. So I used Ink Intuition. The reason I used this deck is because I had a bad experience on one of the days that I had pulled this deck out in, I believe it would be November, and ever since then my brain was kind of I don't want to use this deck, it reminds me of that bad experience. And so I needed to rewire that for January, and I can say that by the end of January I did really look forward to these cards. I like the color palette a lot because it's simplified, so it really reflected very well what kind of energy I was engaging with in January. I took a massive witch's rest for the first 2.5-3 weeks, and I refused to let myself engage in any creative content planning at all. I was even in my classroom, I had set up and prepared for everything in January and December, because I knew that at the beginning of January I just needed to take a break. And so the simplified color palette, the simplified images really helped me to kind of slow down to where I was still engaging with tarot, but I was allowed to meet it in a way that wasn't hectic or crazy or overwhelming. And so I did end up having a really beautiful time with Ink Intuition being one of my envelope decks in January. And I think it looks so good. I just thrifted this new backdrop and I think it looks good next to that. Okay, the other deck I used was Queen of the Moon Oracle. I have had a 180 relationship with this deck. If you would have asked me this time last year if I liked this deck, I would have told you it was on the chopping block. And then one day I decided that I was going to edge the deck. I've edged it in this nice little orange color, orange being my favorite. And I just loved how it looked, and I love the process. And so I can truly say that modding this deck helped me to develop my relationship with it. But in terms of an envelope practice, having a oracle deck that has one keyword really helped me to focus and structure my day. Because if you're pulling 3 to 4 cards for a daily envelope practice, but you had pulled all of these a month ago, sometimes you open up the envelope and you're okay, where do I go with that? So having a very firm rooted keyword really helped me make the most of that practice. In addition, in my envelope, I also had my Divining Poets Lucille Clifton. This keeps making it on my channel because it's such a winner for me. I think that y'all know by now that if I really love a deck, I use it. And this is clearly one of my top probably 3 Oracle decks at this time. And I had so many beautiful moments with it, not only in my December envelope practice, but also in my January practice. I like this deck for the envelope readings because sometimes you pull the card in the morning and you instantly know what it's saying, but other times, because it's essentially a lot of metaphoric language, because this is pulled from Lucille Clifton's body of poetry, you don't know what the card is saying until you sit back down and reflect on it at the end of the night. So it's almost as if my tarot and my oracle with like the single keyword kind of give me a glimpse of what the day is going to be like, and this kind of thematically shows me the thread that's running through all of the days. Because a lot of these cards, because we're pulling from one poet in particular, a lot of these cards are like very thematically similar. And I really appreciate that because we're pulling from one body of poetry, I'm able to tell over the course of a month if particular cards with similar themes are coming up for me. Whereas I feel like with this deck, because it's a single keyword, like this is great for daily use within the envelope practice, and I will keep this structure, but I mean, protection is vastly different from power, which is vastly different from beauty. Like, yeah, there might be some similarities between these words, but it's almost as if the ambiguous nature of poetry leaves more room for interpretation. And like I had already said before, like in the morning when I am exhausted, sometimes I need direct instruction like my tarot and like my single word like oracle deck, but then some days I do have more spoons, and in those cases I want to kind of invoke my intuition and just really wrap myself in poetry. So I'm going to continue with Lucille Clifton's oracle deck. This is also going to be in my envelope for February. As far as it goes with the other things that I'm going to stuff into my envelope for February, I have decided that I'm finally going to put the Arthurian Tarot to use. This keeps popping up on my channel, and I'm sure y'all are like, Katie, when are you actually going to use this deck? Because like I'm feeling that way, y'all. Katie, when are you actually going to use this deck? I love it. I think it's gorgeous. I don't know why I've had such a hard time like jumping into it. I could say that it's a language barrier for the most part, but I also don't use guidebooks very often, so I don't think that's it. I think I was just waiting for the correct time. And I guess that time is now, because I'm just going to jump in. Tarot Arthurian paired with the Lucille Clifton Oracle as well as Faceted Garden is going to be my envelope lineup for this month. So first off, I'm like really like chuffed at how good these decks look together. Like a lot. I was like, I have been thinking about what kind of oracle deck that I can use with Tarot Arthurian, and I just feel like this is a natural pair, especially at this time. I think that February for me is associated a lot with pastel colors, and I think that both of these decks have an extremely pastel color palette, which is just so soft and so nurturing, right? When we think about this time of season for me, there are a lot of little seeds that are growing both within ourselves because it's the beginning of the year, but also outside. And I want something that offers me like this soft, gentle, protective layer. Like this is the Queen of Swords, and even she, even though you can tell that she's a very logical woman, she still has this sense of nurturing to her from this color palette, like this soft colors. And so I think that I'm gonna have a really good time using this as my envelope pairing. Like, I don't know, if you have like 2 of your favorite oracles in like one envelope, I feel like naturally the tarot deck is going to benefit from that just by like sheer association. So I'm really excited this month. I think this is my favorite lineup yet for the envelopes. All right, so that'll be it. So we'll touch a little bit more on like the garden motif in a little bit, but I do want to share with you kind of like a one-off practice that I did that I really enjoyed. So this is Chromata Emblemata. So I originally thought that I was going to use the Shakespeare Tarot, or rather the Shakespeare Oracle, which is an out-of-print deck, for my Hamlet practice, because I am reading that in preparation to teach it next month to my students. But I found that like the Shakespeare Oracle was a little bit too heady for me. And so I ended up pulling out Chromata Emblemata. And what I was doing is every time before I sat down and read this Dover Thrift edition of Hamlet, I would set an intention. So I would pull a card to ask myself, what is something I can focus on in the book that I'm missing out on? Because I do find that even though I've read plenty of Shakespeare before, this is my least favorite Shakespeare play. I'm only on Act 3, but I am struggling to get through it. And I think part of it is my fault because like I would rather be teaching Othello. I've taught Othello at least, I think I've taught Othello 3 times to seniors at this point. So it's like I already have the lesson plans for Othello. I love Othello. I've never had an issue with Othello. And now all of a sudden I have to teach this because it's in the curriculum. I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of like wasted effort that I already have everything made and I gotta teach this. I don't even like it. So part of it is probably me, is that I'm reluctant to do it because I'm like, damn, I don't want to waste all that energy all over again. There is a lot of reluctance there, but also I just find Hamlet to be a little bit too, like Hamlet the character to be a little bit too whiny for my taste. So for those of you who don't know, Hamlet is a young prince who finds out that his dad comes back to him in the form of a ghost and tells him that his uncle killed his father. So essentially like the king, his brother killed him and then took the throne and married his wife. So if you've seen The Lion King, it's similar to that. There's like lots of little nuggets of beauty within his monologues that I can appreciate, but overall, I just don't like him very much as a character yet. So anyway, to get back to the tarot point of it, I was asking questions like, what can I focus on in order, what am I missing? What do I need to see in order to appreciate Hamlet for the character that he is? And the card that I received was this one, which is carry fire in one hand and water in the other. And I was pulling, like I pulled this card the day before I sat down to read the section of Hamlet scheming and trying to figure out how he can get back at his uncle. And so he sets up this play for the specific purpose of seeing how his uncle would act. And it was a very clever and logical approach to see if his uncle did indeed kill his father. So he's carrying fire in one hand in terms of his rage, but also water in the sense of he's cooling himself down because he knows he can't go batshit crazy yet. And I was like, oh, maybe I do like Hamlet. Like maybe he's not too terrible of a character. So I think maybe tarot has like saved Hamlet for me. We're gonna see. But I thought to myself, oh my god, I'm an English teacher. I read tarot all the time. I read literature all the time. Why am I not asking literary analysis questions like, you know, what is the character's main motivation? And pulling a tarot card for it. Like this shit works. And so I'm going to be continuing this on not only with Hamlet, but with other stories as well, because I found it to be kind of the saving grace for a book that I was struggling with, or a play that I was struggling with. Another practice I will be continuing is my work with the Illuminated deck of Holy Souls by Lindsay Williams. So I am quite fond of this deck. I like anything that Lindsay Williams does, to be honest. I'm so thankful that because Desert Illuminations came out mass market, I have like 2 decks by her by now, and I love that. So I grew up Catholic, like I've already said before, within this space. I live in an extremely deeply Catholic area, and there are lots of places around me that are named after Catholic saints. And I find that it helps me to be a little bit more intentional about the history of where I'm living if I know the lore of the saints that are embedded in the place names of that around me. And so I've been enjoying working with this practice. I will pull one saint and leave it on my altar until I feel like my work with them is done. So I am kind of contemplating them and reading about their stories. I've been doing that online because unfortunately, like this deck does come with like a pamphlet. It comes like with this pamphlet with this QR code, but the QR code only has probably about a paragraph written about each saint. So I've actually purchased an encyclopedia of saints, which should be coming in pretty soon, just so that I can have something that's like hard copy to work with. I do not like using anything on my phone when I'm reading tarot. So I purchased a tool to help me engage with the lore of these individuals and the stories of these individuals just a little bit more. And it's not necessarily that I'm practicing Catholicism, but it's just a really great thing to be aware of what's around me and be able to know the stories that have driven people and the acts that they've committed within my area. I just feel like that's important. So I've been enjoying this beautiful, gorgeous deck. We have linen, it has shiny. She was pricey. She was definitely my biggest splurge. By far, definitely my biggest splurge. I think when everything was said and done, she was almost $100. So she's definitely one of the most expensive decks that I've ever bought. But because I keep her on my altar, and I don't really ever foresee that going out of style, I don't ever see myself discontinuing that practice. I don't know. I feel like if it's an altar deck, it's kind of worth it because it's going to get a lot more use than some of my other working decks. So I think that's my catch up from January for the most part. I did want to show you my most used deck of January, and that was the Crow deck, the Crow Tarot. I love the Crow Tarot. The Crow Tarot and I had beautiful interactions this month. I pulled the Queen of Pentacles from this deck on the day of the snow day, and it was just so beautiful that even though I was locked inside my house and it was 3 degrees outside and I've never experienced cold like that, that I can look to the comforts and the softness and the security of what is around me within my home, the soft blankets, the soft socks, even though I hate socks, I do wear them when they get 3 degrees out, the good food, you know, and just really relish in that comfort. So the crows were my constant companion in January. They spoke to me a lot. They definitely fit that pared back energy of January when everything is just really cold. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and switch them out because I've been finding that I like to have like bird decks on hand. I've been really getting into bird energy. I'm going to switch them out to thematically fit February a little bit better with my gorgeous, stunning Little Bird Tarot from Shanna D. The little bird and I are always friends in this deck, but I did find that the crow's energy kind of matched winter more. Now that we're in spring, I think that these soft, gorgeous, neutral colors, isn't that beautiful in camera? I just had to like take a second and look because this looks really good against this backdrop. Anyway, I got distracted. I think that with the birds that are coming back around and the garden that I'm starting at this time of the year, you know, I want to manifest those birds that are coming into my life. I want to see more bird activity around me. And by see more bird life around me, like I want to set up the conditions for them to exist within my land, but I also want to practice being more intentional of noticing the birds when I see them and really learning from them. So I think that this is going to be a bird year overall. But I am especially looking forward to using little birds in February. And I use this for everything. This is an exceptional general reader. I find that it works really well for making plans because you can see things from like a bird's eye point of view. I like it when doing creative work for that reason because I can see things from a grander perspective. But I find that this deck is just like a comfort to feel because the cardstock is this nice, great, excellent linen. This is my favorite cardstock out of any deck I own ever. Like it literally quite feels like such a luxurious, sweet little treat. And I want that at this time of the year. And as you can tell, I'm really into this color palette. So let's bring it on. I love the little birds. So this will be probably my main working deck of February. So I'll have the Tarot Arthurian as my envelope deck, but this probably will be the one that stays on my altar all month. I think that this will be my main working deck. All right, another one I foresee myself using, please ignore my terrible edge job. I'm trying to get over the fact that I think I ruined the edges, but that's okay. I refuse to buy another copy. It is my deck. I was learning. I'm gonna show myself grace. This is Tarot of the Moon Garden. I'm also gonna pair this deck with Totem Flower Essences, which is a brand new deck that I just received. Like I haven't even read with it yet. And even though they're not the most aesthetic match together, I feel like thematically they fit what I want to bring in for this month. So I'm going to talk about how I've historically used Tarot of the Moon Garden, and then I'll flip to the Oracle deck that's on the side and talk about how I plan to use that. So Tarot of the Moon Garden has been used for me every single year since I purchased it in February to help me plan for my garden. Like, that's it. That's what I've been using it for. And so I love the possibilities that are present within the Tarot of the Moon Garden. I love when I look at this, I can identify, for example, this gorgeous fern that's down here. I've been wanting to buy some shield ferns for my garden. I just have never gotten around to it. So if I were to pull this in a reading, I might say, you know what, I think I need to focus in on the shade plants that are in my garden, especially because I've been hesitating, such as the Two of Swords. I've been hesitating to do that. Why have I been doing that? And so that is traditionally how I used it last year. I'll also read it as a tarot. So like if I were to pull the Queen of Pentacles, I think the Queen of Pentacles is vastly aware of the physical needs of everything around her. So this might be a card that I pull and I consider to myself, okay, maybe I need to stop thinking about this section versus this section and think about the transitions that link them together like a Queen of Pentacles would, the whole ecosystem, so to speak. And so it's where it's placed for me. And so I know I'm going to do that a lot in February. Hopefully I'll be able to bring my cards outside and actually show you that practice. That's been on my filming list for quite some time. But I'm going to really, I think, kind of level it up with the totem flower essences that are on the side. So as far as I'm concerned, I love the totem flower essences because the creator is from Texas. And so what I've been finding as I've been flipping through the deck, because I haven't used it yet, is that a lot of the things that are present in these cards, I actually can grow in my yard. So absolutely cypress tree. I mean, I can look outside my window and I see two of them right now. My cypress trees are the ones that I connect to before every reading because their roots are literally underneath where I'm sitting in my tarot room. Like, I can feel their roots underneath me, for example. And so to receive like a card with cypress is such a powerful reminder of my connection to this earth, but also sage. I mean, I have a tattoo of a sage plant because it is one of my biggest spiritual contenders. So the flower essence deck, actually I have a tattoo of this sage right here, and I did not realize this was in the deck because I've only flipped through it. That is fucking awesome. I love that so much. Scarlet sage is like my home. It is, oh, I love that. Okay, so anyway, so the flower essences deck, creator makes flower essences. So she sells it like in her Etsy shop. So I'll leave it in the link down below. And you can just take a drop of these essences every single day. And she considers what kinds of magical properties these plants have. And so she makes like these combinations of different flower essences together. So for example, one of them might be called like Outspoken, and it's made of orange trumpet. So if you were trying to really kind of embrace that outspokenness, you could purchase like the flower essence that she has created. And I find that to be a really cool concept because I also do so much more with flowers than what I even show on my YouTube, which is kind of crazy. I don't know why I don't show that as much as I want to. So I think that might be a goal for this year, that I do that. Especially with passion flower. I mean, hell, like my other tattoo is of a Gulf fritillary and they eat passion flower. So when I pull this card, I remember how my husband and I harvested passion flower leaves because they make like a beautiful sleepy time tea. And so I have a lot of personal associations with what is here. And I think that this deck is going to help remind me not only like the visual planning of my garden, but also what are the purposes that I'm trying to use these plants for, that I'm really thrilled to work with. Here we go. So I will show you a guidebook entry for Dandelion Summer. Okay. So this is the summer. So I do love that the guidebook is numbered because and the cards too, because I hate when a guidebook is not numbered. So it's pretty easily accessible for that. But it mentions the plant, it mentions the chakra, it mentions the element, and then it has a write-up explaining exactly how that dandelion is connected to summer, and then what that dandelion can bring forth in your life. So according to this, the dandelion essence is one that helps you to embody a more physical, present, and joyful experience of life. It's an excellent flower essence for inner child work or those wanting to cultivate more joy in one's life. You have the positive qualities and then the patterns of imbalance here too. And I like this term patterns of imbalance because it's less about like, I don't know, when I see like shadow meaning or like reverse meaning, it just kind of feels like intimidating to work with that sometimes because you're like, no, I don't want to poke at my shadows. But in terms of like patterns of imbalance, I like that language because it's like, okay, it's just out of balance. Like I can work on that. So it's a cool concept. So these will be a stellar pair, and I'll probably show in my video next month how this ends up going for me. Okay. All right, so that was Tarot of the Moon Garden, and then this is Totem Flower Essence deck. I love jewel tones, so I have a feeling that one's gonna feature on my channel a lot. All right, next I have my favorite February deck of all time, which is Tarot of Light. I think it used to be called Tarot of Love, which is why I keep saying it. And Enchanted Blossoms, not Blooms. Y'all, I've had this deck for 3 years and I think I've called it by its wrong name for 3 years. I keep everything in bags, so like sometimes I just like forget what stuff is called. And then like I was looking at the guidebook the other day and I was like, why is the guidebook called Enchanted Blossoms when the deck is called Enchanted Blooms? I don't know. We'll see. So I probably will like mess up on calling it the wrong name because I mean, I've been calling it the wrong name for 3 years, but whatever. I mean, it is what it is. So I think that this is a perfect deck for February because once again, I want that soft, nurturing energy. Guys, I don't want to be hard on myself this month. I am coming out of some very deep shadow work. I'm going into my first Saturn return very soon. And so it's like, I already have enough stuff that's coming up naturally. I want to make sure that my tarot practice is reflective of where I need it to be for my mental health. And so I want the softness, I want the delicateness this month. I don't want to pull any cards that are terribly asking too much of me or anything like that. And I say this, but you know, any tarot deck, even if it's a soft one, can be confrontational and can be confronting. And I know that, but I'm so damn tired of getting the 5 of Wands. Like, I would rather get 5 of Trees limitation than 5 of Wands with like the futile arguments. Like, I don't know, I feel like limitation, I can work with that, guys. I feel like I can work with that. And so I think that this is always one of my forever bonded pairs. I bring one out, I bring the other. They're not exactly monogamous. Like, so for example, I think that I will use little birds. Now that I'm looking at this, I should have pulled this out earlier, but now that I'm looking at this, I think that these two decks will probably look really good together and just be soft and supporting. And like, yeah, probably these two decks together, it's giving like grandma, but like grandma knew what was up. She knew like to drink the coffee, to sit and watch the birds, to garden. I want to be like cozy grandma. Okay, like my granny was deeply embedded in nature's rhythms, and I think I'm going to be calling on my granny a lot this month and really just embracing that grandma softness. So sweet, sweet. I love these decks. I'm so excited. I think I've kind of built like a capsule collection this month, so, ooh, okay. Next, I'm going to show these at the same time, just so that this video is not an hour long. I also have Fifth Spirit in my bag, in my capsule bag, and ooh, what is the name of this one? Land of the Giants. I had to pause my camera to look at it. Ooh, I think I'm getting too many decks if I can't remember their names. Ooh. Okay, so I might use these together, I might use these separately, but I know that both of them are going to be in the bag. Hence again, I want pastel colors, right? So I think that the Land of the Giants in particular is ticking that box for me. It also has a lot of little creatures in it because the basic concept is that these creatures have found this abandoned place and they're going inside to see what kind of shit they can get up to. And I like the little creatures. I feel like in the late winter, early spring, the first things that we see come back are the birds, but then the next thing we see are the tiny, minute little insects. And so I definitely want to be reminded to pay attention to what's below me and the smallness around me. And, you know, even though my zinnias and my Mexican sunflowers are not 12 feet tall yet, I can still pay attention to the small little saplings that are underneath me, right? Like the tiny itty bitty little seedlings as well. So I like that. And they don't look horrendous together. I think both of them are very general for that. But in particular, I'm pulling on Fifth Spirit because, I mean, I do live in the United States, right? And I live in a conservative area. And I think that Charlie Claire Burgess's general philosophy and attitude right now is a comfort to me. It's nice to be able to see my own personal beliefs kind of reflected back to me in a tarot. I do find comfort in that, and knowing that there is a tarot that represents my friend groups, my social groups, my personal beliefs, my philosophies. And so I definitely would like to continue down the path of studying Charlie's work, and probably read Radical Tarot sometime soon. It's definitely on my list this year. So I really appreciate y'all being here, and thank y'all for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Every like, every comment, everything you do, and all of the ways to support my channel. It's very much appreciated. So I hope that all of you have a gorgeous February, and I will see you again next time.